Chinese officials say they're cautiously optimistic that a diplomatic solution can be reached with North Korea before they further develop their nuclear capabilities. A high-level Chinese envoy has now been holding talks with North Korea on its nuclear program, a move that President Trump has hailed as positive for diplomacy. For more insight on this, I want to bring in Fox News foreign policy analyst Kiron Skinner. Good afternoon, Kiron. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, big picture here. Do you think that the president's Asia tour helped America's standing on the global stage or hurt it, or do we come out sort of neutral?
I'm of two minds. I believe that the diplomatic offensive that the president's been on in 2017 that ultimately culminated in the Asia trip has had a huge impact on America's standing in the world because his message has been consistent. So I think without the diplomatic offensive of this year, of his statements and his travels, his speech in Poland, his speech at the United Nations, the Asia trip by itself would not have been as significant. But when you put it all together, there's a consistent message about both trade and North Korea, that the United States will not be taken advantage of on trade in the Asian region of the world, and on North Korea, that it demands a denuclearized Korean peninsula, and it's building an alliance, the Trump administration, of states throughout the Indo-Pacific region who believe the same. So it's been a fundamental shift in U.S. policy in 2017.
So all things totaled together sort of bring us the Trump doctrine, which, as far as I can see, is America first. How does he apply that to the North Korean nuclear threat? Do you think he advanced that cause during this trip? Do you think we are any closer to forging some kind of a resolution of the nuclear issue?
That's an excellent question, and he really tested the America First idea in his two-week tour of Asia, and the way he has described it, it is a doctrine that's committed to putting America's interests first, not those of multilateral agreements or transnational actors or bureaucrats in Belgium, but the interest of the United States. But at the same time, he's encouraged other nations to put their interests first, and then coming together, finding the capacity for mutual agreement around shared values. That's a very different approach than prior Democratic and Republican administrations that have relied on international fora to help decide on what the interests of nations are. President Trump was talking as much to allies and potential Asian allies on his tour about really figuring out rigorously what their interests are. And as the more he talked, the more they came to the common understanding that the big threat in the region to everyone's national security, not just in Asia but around the globe, is North Korea's nuclear and intercontinental ballistic missile programs.
So it sounds like you're describing a shift away from multilateralism towards bilateral relationships that is nation to nation. On that front, a remarkable development I think that we've seen is China's agreement to send an envoy to Pyongyang. What do you make of that? Why do you think now? Do you think that is a direct consequence of President Trump's heavy-handed approach to dealing with the region, or is this nothing to do with President Trump?
So just let me take this in two parts. Your first point about a shift away from multilateralism, I think there's a combination of both bilateral activities and agreements and understandings and multilateral activities. Both happened in the context of the Asia trip. On the bilateral side, the president was just amazingly aggressive in going nation by nation, doing the hard work of talking with partners about the threats that they commonly face. On the multilateral side, you know, the concept, the Quad, the four nations, the United States, Australia, India, and Japan, having talks among that group about the common threats and how they may coordinate as a counter to China. So I think there are elements of both in what the United States is doing now. But in terms of your second point on the issue of the envoy, the Chinese envoy in North Korea. I do think we have something to do with it. Mr. Song Tao has already this month been in Vietnam and Laos, explaining the 19th Communist Party Congress in China, what it meant. So there's this expectation that he would go on to North Korea as well. But I think the tenor and the conversation has been influenced by the way in which President Trump clarifies, both in his Asia tour and throughout the year, the problem of North Korea, and that the only pathway forward for peace and stability in Northeast Asia is to have a denuclearized North Korea. And
Kiron,
so I
we've got to
think
leave it
that
there.
we're important in that way.
We've got to leave it there for today, but we'll have you back soon, hopefully, to talk about the fact that they haven't launched any missiles in the last 2 months. Also an important development.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.